When I was a child, ladies and gentlemen, I was a dreamer. And I read comic books, and I was the hero of the comic book. I saw movies, and I was the hero in the movie.
Welcome, ladies and ladies, to another episode of the Top 10 Favorite, and from what I believe are the best performances by some of the greatest actors in all of cinema.
You didn't think I'd let you down, did you?
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna start from 10 and then snap my fingers now. Turn my head to the right. Hip and shake and swivel and all kinds of groovy things, all the way up to number 1. And always remember, Jack, I have seen every film attainable of each artist. So every list here comes from hip, sophisticated, rocking, rebellious, accuracy. Yeah, it's somebody's special birthday today, folks. Nope, mine is in 3 days, the 11th, in case you're wondering. But the real birthday we need to talk about, celebrating his 90th birthday today, folks, we are talking about one of the greatest pop culture icons in all of history, the 3-time Grammy Award-winning, billion album copy-selling, iconic musical artist whose first name is legendary in and of itself, the one, the only, king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. You know Elvis Aaron Presley, born in Tupelo, Mississippi, but of course, moved to Memphis, Tennessee when he was only 13 years old, already taking up the guitar and singing. Inspired by gospel, rhythm and blues, scratching the itch of hard-moving blues that would later become known as rock and roll. And well, folks, come on, I'm not going to give a whole history of Elvis's life here because we would be here all damn day. As much as I absolutely would love to talk about the history of his life, there are so many great documentaries you can watch on Elvis, like This Is Elvis, the recently released Reinventing Elvis, also The Return of the King, The Fall and Rise of Elvis Presley, which are well-done documentaries. But any self-respecting Elvis fan has to see two of the greatest rock and roll documentary concert films ever, with Elvis on Tour, which won a Golden Globe for Best Documentary. And of course, Elvis, That's the Way It Is. All the raw footage of Elvis in concert, backstage, on the road, and back home with his family is some of the greatest glimpses in the man that most actors can never capture on film. And Elvis certainly has a long laundry list of great actors who portrayed him. And very well, I may add. The best portrayals being Jonathan Rhys-Meyers in a Golden Globe-winning performance in the miniseries Elvis. Of course, Austin Butler's Oscar-nominated portrayal in Elvis, which is indeed the best, but my personal favorite will be revealed later within this video. Yes, we all should know very well the iconic influence in music Elvis Presley has given millions upon millions. But everybody, remember when Elvis was an aspiring actor? Because that's what inspired this little guy. I remember vividly as a kid watching Elvis on screen, not necessarily at a live recorded concert performance, but in film, and being captivated by him. Watching him on screen certainly sparked something in me to want to be like him, as many people all around the world did. It became heavily apparent when you watch him in the dramatic films he made, you see something more, something gigantic, something genuine and real. Okay, all Elvis fans will still say majority of the films he made were just popcorn romps, not ever to be taken seriously, ever. However, when you really know the dreams of Elvis, you find out how he really wanted to be taken seriously as an actor, to work alongside and be respected as an actor, like his acting idols such as James Dean and Marlon Brando. Because Elvis, like a lot of great actors of that time, had hard upbringings, had hopes, dreams, aspirations. He had stories to tell. And with all the great work that was coming out at that time, who wouldn't be heavily inspired, like Elvis was? When it comes to rock stars turned actors, there has never been one like Elvis who showed the absolute most promise as an actor, even inspiring the likes of Elia Kazan wanting to work with him one day. Artists of all kinds wanting to work with Elvis because he was that genuine of a human being, that awesome of an artist, and that giving of a soul that continually inspires me to this day. So let's take care of business, baby. Here are the top 10 best performances of the Pelvis, the king of rock and roll, the actor, Elvis Presley. Okay, ladies, starting off at number 10, we have Kid Galahad, the 1962 remake of the 1937 classic of the same name with Edward G. Robinson, Bette Davis, and Humphrey Bogart. The star quality doesn't quite mirror the 1937 film here, with the exception of the great Gig Young and, of course, Elvis Presley, baby, as a young, hopeful mechanic, but discovers his true talent in boxing, which Gig Young takes advantage of.
Don't push me, Willie. I'm a grease monkey that won't slide so easily. Shut up, I said. You can't yell loud enough to make me shut up. Till I tell you what I think of the fight game. I think it stinks. And when it does for me what I want to do, I'm getting out.
However, the likes of Gig Young's sister may distract Elvis from the real task at hand. Elvis was trained by the former light welterweight world champion boxer Mushy Callahan, who rated Elvis as a worthy athlete, and it shows very much in all of his boxing scenes. Elvis was always an artist who wanted to try new things, and being at the top 10 box office star power platform, he could afford to try whatever he could. Even karate. There are only two men that know karate, the Chinese and the King. I love that movie, I can't help it. Jack White does a good portrayal of him too, even though it's a joke. If Colonel Tom Parker would just let Elvis do what he wanted to do. Oh man, that is a constant theme all throughout this video, let me tell you. The soundtrack is not too bad for the film, with King of the Whole Wide World, the opening title song, being the real highlight, personally. Through all the popcorn movies he did, Kid Galahad still had a great heartbeat to it that I enjoy too many times. You'll get a knock out of it. Number 9, Follow That Dream.
I've gotta follow that dream wherever that dream may lead. I gotta follow that dream.
This absolutely should be a tad higher, I'll admit that, but Follow That Dream represents that pocket of time where Elvis made sincere great films before the whole beach wave came crashing in. Based on the book Pioneer Go Home by Richard Powell, Elvis leads his family of vagabonds against the government and fighting for their own independence. It's such a good-natured film with funny moments anchored by Elvis's great power of comedy and drama. Writer Powell was annoyed with the casting of Elvis at first, but after he saw the final product, he was proud of Elvis bringing the country bumpkin ideal in full heartwarming effect. In the words of Variety magazine, he delivered the right blend of horse sense and naivete to get the character's intentions across. Amazingly, the great Tom Petty's uncle worked as a crew member on set, where they filmed in Florida, and brought Tom Petty to set one day, meeting Elvis. Tom Petty has said he had been blown away and inspired to become a rock star himself, like Elvis. And you can say Tom Petty really does mirror that image, being one of the greatest musicians and rock stars of all time. But that wouldn't have happened if it hadn't have been for the magic of Elvis, spreading joy to everybody. Number 8, Wild in the Country. A great surprise for many Elvis fans, well, including myself, because of how focused and sincere the script is, based on the novel The Lost Country by J.R. Salamanca, with the amazing playwright Clifford Odets adapting the screenplay? Now this film is no East of Eden of any kind, but what makes it stand out among Elvis's grand filmography is his presence, his dedication to the character of Glenn Tyler, who is on fire with brooding emotion, and a lovely psychiatrist played by a miscast Hope Lang sees in him that power of being a great writer. The film still divides quite a number of fans, those seeking more of a darker and softer turn from Elvis in the dramatics and not quite getting that, and those who want more of the singing and dancing Elvis and disappointed with the big lack of songs. And obviously, this was a big tackle from Elvis, since he always wanted to do films that focused less and less on singing and focused more on the actual dramatics. He wanted to stretch his dramatic chops so badly, and when you look at those softer moments of him wanting a better life in this film, you can certainly feel how well he's listening, especially to Tuesday Weld, whom he had a spicy affair with. This would sadly be his last dramatic role for a long while. For the next film he would make right after Wild in the Country would be right here, number 7, Blue Hawaii.
Do I feel the touch of your hand on mine?
Ah, yes, one of everyone's favorites, right? Sensationally, the first of 3 movies Elvis would do shot on location in beautiful Hawaii, Kauai, and Waikiki, specifically for this one. If you're thinking this is the film where Elvis stretches his dramatic chops, well, Instead of his character wanting to be a race car driver or James Bond, Chad wants to be a tour guide. But of course, women will always be a problem for him.
It worked. She's jealous.
Dame Angela Lansbury plays his loving mother, who was only 10 years older than he was here. But she's Angela. She kills it every time. The second of 9 pictures director Norman Taurog collaborated with Elvis on was clearly so iconic, with a Grammy-nominated soundtrack that is certainly one of the best ever, featuring and the classic.
But I can't help falling in love with you.
Ah, yes. Being the blueprint of movies Colonel Tom Parker would manufacture for Elvis from then on out, one can only clearly see why it was so damn successful. It's because Elvis is just so damn charming, so electric as an entertainer. Hawaii still holds it as such a staple for traveling there, and by the time you see Elvis get married with a Hawaiian wedding song, one can't not get swept away by the man. Number 6, Loving You.
Well, I usually get paid for singing as a rule. Now I figure you ought to do whatever you do for me. So how about stepping outside and putting a new set of seat covers on my car, huh?
Elvis's second film, technically his first major starring role as Deke Rivers, or is he really? A humble delivery boy who was discovered by Wendell Corey and Elizabeth Scott, a country star and music publicist whom tried to help promote Deke to becoming the next best rock star. This was his big partnership builder with Paramount Studios, and considering Colonel Tom Parker was always on site as a consultant, you can say the final product of the film was inspired by Elvis and Colonel Parker's own experience of seeing Elvis perform. And that certainly never leaves the narrative, with Deke just rocking and rolling in front of hundreds and thousands screaming ladies while he sings more of my favorite tunes and your favorites in the film. Yeah, that's right, one of the biggest hits of his career, not to mention the title tune, of course. The soundtrack was ginormous, and the film did amazingly since Paramount released it in neighborhood theaters in major cities rather than the conventional movie premiere. With this money-making method, the producers called it the Presley pattern, for it gathered more young kids than ever. His performance is so natural and humble that you do believe his every word as the young hopeful with guts.
My future you care about, it's yours. It's what I can do for you. You don't care about me or Tex or anybody, just yourself.
Number 5.
Viva Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas.
Oh yes, certainly an iconic classic with a theme song for a city that is unlike any other. The only other song that would match its power to the city would be Sinatra's New York, New York, indeed. But who really makes that theme song what it is? You know, it is the King. And his performance is one of terrific and yet controversial legend. Terrific because he pours his electrifying best in the role of Lucky Jackson, who's looking to race in the Grand Prix in Vegas, but needs a new engine. In the meantime, he'll just try to charm the swinging pants off of this kitten with a whip. And Margaret. Their chemistry, sexy and on fire. Which brings me to the controversial legend, for it was the highly publicized affair of the year practically, which in Anne's words lasted about a year, being each other's soulmates. Of course, poor Priscilla. It's terrible, but in just the case of the film itself, folks, Elvis and Anne worked sensationally together, creating a duo that not many musical comedies can ever do. The way they react off each other is like butter in a frying pan, with the heat turned up all the way. Elvis finally met his match in a co-star with Anne Margaret here that, in my opinion, had never been repeated. They brought out the best in each other and made this film the pinnacle of classic films set in Las Vegas. With the brilliant MGM musical director George Sidney behind the camera, you have some of the best staged and shot musical sequences. What with Lady Loves Me? What I Say with a young Terry Garr in the back there? And personally, my favorite number in the whole film.
Come on, everybody, and snap your fingers now. Come on, everybody, and clap your hands real loud. Come on, everybody, take a real deep breath and repeat after
You talk about blood pumping rock that'll lift you up from your seats. Shocked in my alma mater's gym. Funny enough. UNLV. God, with Elvis shaking those hips, rocking his toes with his hair ever so stiff. It's like a black suede statue of hair. It's glorious. Now, when we come to his vocals on Today, Tomorrow, and Forever, you are touched from the inside out. Elvis was so proud of the popularity of this film and grateful to Vegas in general, for it would be Elvis's saving grace of success for the last 8 years of his life. But Vegas was really the blessed city, and Margaret was the blessed co-star. We were the blessed receivers of Elvis's power and magic in his most successful, blockbusting film to date. I never get tired of watching it, and neither should you. Number 4, Flaming Star.
You saw him, arguing and stalling, all time Ma's dying, keeping us there more than an hour. It was just 5 minutes before we got here that she died. If we'd have gotten here just a little sooner, she may be alive now. You know it's his fault. Put that knife down. Get out of the way. She was worth 1,000 of them, and they let her die.
How I could easily rate this one even higher, folks. I'm not even joking, and I'm sure that a lot of you are not even joking. Often regarded as a lot of folks' personal favorite, it is not hard to see why, as Elvis completely takes the screen as Pacer Burton, a half-breed who has come to the crossroads between staying with his white settler family or give in to the flaming star of death with his tribe. Elvis is so damn good in this one that you can feel the spit and sweat he gives, and the special ingredient personally has to go to director Don Siegel for that. The truth is, Elvis shines the best when he has a damn good director behind him, like Don Siegel and George Sidney, etc. And thank God for Siegel, who believed in Elvis, since Elvis was always vocal on how he wanted better roles, with few singing. And even though Elvis sings the title number, which is a great title song, along with another ditty, that gets over and done with pretty quick, and we get into the action. Every vibrant moment from Elvis shakes the screen that anybody who is an Elvis hater can sit and watch Elvis take stage with class and confidence. The film didn't do as well as his previous popcorn movies, but that wasn't the point. What we received is one hell of a layer performance that required a lot of great physical action from Elvis, and he delivers on all gun barrels.
You were the worst. You made me feel the worst.
His own image on the film being a huge sensation with artist Andy Warhol, who created the variations of Double Elvis and Elvis times 11 art piece, which is still housed in the Andy Warhol Museum. Any fan of Westerns have to agree that this story takes an impactful shape, especially for its time, because Elvis made himself available and present for such a great narrative.
You live for me, Clint. Maybe someday, somewhere, people will understand folks like us.
Number 3, Love Me Tender.
Love me tender, love me sweet.
Elvis's big debut, his very first feature, that I hold still very, very close to my heart, for it was the very first Elvis performance in a film that I ever saw. Funny thing about Elvis's casting here is that right after his screen test, Heartbreak Hotel became the #1 hit single, the second longest running #1 hit single of the year. What was the #1 longest running hit single that year, you may ask? Oh, Don't Be Cruel and Hound Dog. So Elvis was indeed already on top of the world. So his screen test for producer Hal B. Wallace, consisting of reading lines from the film version of The Rainmaker and lip-syncing to Blue Suede Shoes, became a solid contract deal of 1 picture a year with the option of 6 more, and making other films outside the studio. And Elvis didn't want to take the part of the youngest brother of the Reno family, where the 3 other Reno brothers just returned home from the Civil War. The eldest being Vance, played by Richard Egan. Vance can't wait to see his honey Kathy, played by Deborah Paget. But once Vance and the brothers return home, Vance finds out that Kathy married Clint, played by Elvis, because reports said Vance died at war. Everyone loves a love triangle. Elvis didn't want to take the role because the role was very small when he got it. But Elvis still really loved the story. So because Elvis signed on, they beefed up his role, and of course, made him sing multiple songs, which obviously are still perfection when you watch him. Even giving a little hip swivel like we deserve, not to mention the title number. Being his first film receiving an introducing credit, Elvis is so raw and so green, you can see the hopeful joy in his face when he's on screen with other worthy actors, like himself. Therefore, all eyes were on him, seeing if he would mess up filming. But au contraire, Elvis came to set and knew not only his lines word perfect, but everyone else's lines. He knew the whole script, so Elvis was more than prepared and took his role with the utmost seriousness.
Quit lying to me, Kathy. I heard all your lies and believed them just like you wanted me to. Like the night you stood at our window crying, saying it was only a bad dream. And then yesterday at the schoolhouse when you ran away from me because of something you advanced and said.
No, Clint, listen, I'm not...
Stop it, Clint! Give her a chance! For what, to deny it? She can't. Go on, say it, Kathy. Say I'm lying. Say you want your lover. Say you ain't laid awake every night by my side thinking of him. Wishing I was Vance. Wishing you'd waited for him and never married me.
Shut up, Clint. There ain't none of it so.
Tell me he's never had you in his arms since he came back. Tell me he hasn't kissed
Stop
you.
it, Clint, you're hurting.
You can't say it because it's true.
If you haven't seen it, should I spoil it for you? Oh, I guess I have to. So if you haven't seen it, I dare say watch it as soon as possible. So spoilers ahead, sorry folk. But when a certain action happens at the end of the film, such as Elvis's death, it was too much for Elvis fans to take, even his own mother. In all of his movies, he could no longer die on screen. Because his very first movie, Love Me Tender, was built around him incorporating his musicianship, it really left an imprint of Elvis the rock star acting in movies, rather than Elvis the actor seeking himself in a role. However, Elvis received tenderly loving reviews, all among the side of, oh wow, Elvis can actually act? Some were negative, of course, but when you look in his eyes of all the dramatic scenes, you see the actor wanting so much to get out of him. And it does, as Elvis gives everything of himself, blending in with the ensemble rather than sticking out and stealing the show, which is hard to do because it's still Elvis here. But his performance in Love Me Tender shines a light of young, hopeful musicians wanting to be real actors, that it inspired this little guy to become the best actor he could be. I still thank you, Elvis. Number 2, Jailhouse Rock.
Walking through a party in the county jail. The prison band was there and they began to wail. The band was jumping and the joint began to swing. You should have heard this knocked out jailbird sing that rock.
Hell yeah, baby. This is what rockabilly is all about, and it took Elvis the man to really kick it out for the big screen. Amazing enough, that whole Jailhouse Rock number, originally choreographed by Alex Romero, was not working for Elvis. Elvis didn't like the bland dancing for it. So Elvis decided to throw his own moves in, and as critics and audiences alike have said, it created the greatest musical moment for Elvis in his whole filmography, but also technically creating the very first music video. Folks, Jailhouse Rock is practically almost tied with number 1 just because it's so damn iconic. Elvis's third film here had to be something to knock audiences out of their seats. And with a simple story like, get ready for it, a construction worker who makes a lot of money.
What are you going to do with all that money?
I'm gonna buy me a herd of chorus girls and make them dance on my bed.
Accidentally killing someone in a bar brawl, gets a maximum sentence of 10 years, gets sly inspiration to become a rock star. The film gathered a lot of negative reactions still, for it was showing Elvis as a true anti-hero, or in plain blunt words,
He's a piece of shit. You know it, and I know it.
which is why I love seeing Elvis in this role. His performance is captivating as a true rebel, a young hotshot who wants the world, but at the same time, couldn't care less. Wheels and deals and just snakes his way practically to the top. In every turn he has, between his engaging scenes with Mickey Shaughnessy to his hot and heavy scenes with the tragic Judy Tyler, who passed away in a car crash just 3 days after the film wrapped.
How dare you think such cheap tactics would work with me?
What are tactics, honey? It's just the beast in me.
They're all so damn great. All the musical scenes are electrifying too. You cannot deny it, from Dreaming Eyes to one of my favorite numbers,
I guess it's just because you were so square. Baby, I don't care.
which has been covered by so many. Elvis's Vince Everett was such a bastard, but since he's played by Elvis Presley, there is a deep, dark soul in him that you see he had a semblance of a heart. And retrospectively, you can understand his attitude, his swagger. where he's been, and what hand he's been dealt with, and has been ranked and rated by most as his ultimate best on screen, for it still remains the only film Elvis did being inducted in the National Film Registry. Alrighty, Jules, here are some honorable mentions for you. Tickle Me. Oh, lordy lord. Certainly one of the better ridiculous musical comedies Elvis ever did. The fifth collaboration between he and director Norman Taurog. Elvis has a lot of hilarious moments here, like,
What do you think it is, a ham sandwich? Return to sender.
for the soundtrack void of any new tracks. All past singles on released albums, one of which being Night Rider. Elvis sizzles from top to bottom with all the ladies, of course, but has so many silly routines that one can say, God, Elvis, really? But one does need to have fun, and that is certainly what Elvis does here. He has a blast, and significantly, this film saved the production studio Allied Artists, since Elvis took a pay cut to do it, resulting in a great profit for the studio. Elvis still looked out for the studios that gave back to him as well, which you gotta love a guy like that. Charo, for what seemed to be the last saving grace of a role for Elvis, turned out to be a rewritten hodgepodge of classic Western cliches. However, it stands strong with great Elvis fans as the only movie he doesn't sing in, if you leave out the title credit song, of course, simply entitled Charo. When Clint Eastwood turned down the role, Elvis strapped on his boots and spurs and wore his hat like Bing Russell, Kurt's dad, off of his westerns, and grew a nice little beard for his gang member Jess Wade, who's wanting to go straight. And honestly, Elvis gives some solid moments in this. It could have been much, much more. It really could, absolutely. But the effort and dream of wanting to be taken seriously as an actor heaves loudly through the screen. That Elvis once said he was still so proud of his work in his third to last film here, which he totally should be. Roustabout. Certainly one of Elvis's better films, quoted by the Village Voice as the Citizen Kane of jukebox movies. Elvis this time is Charlie Rogers, and does the plot really matter? He's just a roustabout.
I'm stage struck, you know, the roar of the crowd goes to my head.
I love his title song, and it's another beautiful thing to be acting alongside the legendary Barbara Stanwyck and Jack Albertson here, and doing his own stunts, which he actually needed 4 stitches for his head. The soundtrack is one of his best too, and Elvis is truly having a blast in what was really growing into his surfin' lovin' factory work after this point of 1964.
As long as you don't try to pay me off in cotton candy.
GI Blues. I love this film personally. The first film Elvis did after his discharge from the Army in 1960. Started off as Christmas in Berlin, this simply morphed into the typical American dream scenario with Elvis wanting to become a nightclub owner while singing his favorite songs. Marking the first collaboration between he and director Taurog, this was a German recipe that'll make you sit back and say, Wunderbar. For it was the first film to see Elvis in a new kind of swagger, being such a heartbreaking schemer, wanting to get ahead in life with more will and appetite.
1, 2, 3. Too bad, Marty. Your girl didn't show up.
This 2-time Grammy-nominated soundtrack features some of our favorites too, like Wooden Heart and Pocketful of Rainbows. Just warms your heart right up, jawohl. It happened at the World's Fair, film number 4 between Elvis and director Norman Taurog, which, if you haven't guessed already, what's such a partnership that worked splendidly. Shot on location in the Seattle Center with a Space Needle, this film was quite difficult, for it required Elvis's character to be kinda incognito, but everywhere the man went, you had thousands of screaming teens. The soundtrack is not one of the best, personally, though who doesn't like
To buy a heart, oh yeah, one broken lover's heart, one broken heart for sale.
And who doesn't love the fact that a tiny little kid who would kick Elvis in the shins turned out to be one of the greatest actors of all time, Kurt Russell.
Boy, did this man really give you a quarter to kick him? Yes, he's some kind of nut.
And would amazingly play him in a TV film just 19 years later, being my favorite portrayal. It all comes full circle, doesn't it? But it all starts with Elvis, leaving such an addicting persona that one can never, ever forget. Number 1.
You're a pretty fancy performer, ain't you, kid?
Now you know what I do for an encore.
King Creole. Hands down, folks, you bet your Cajun biscuits this has always been rated as Elvis's greatest performance in all of his films because of how raw and ready Elvis was to bring this character to
I
life.
stacked chairs and bottles and swept the floor up of every joint on Bourbon Street. It's gotten so I look longer at a dame with clothes on and one without. I'm not a hoodlum, but I am a hustler. I've had to be for a very simple reason.
Based on the novel A Stone for Danny Fisher, he plays Danny Fisher, recently moved to the French Quarter in New Orleans with his family. His father, played by Oscar winner Dean Jagger, and being a rebellious teenager, he's got some issues with authority. So much that he attracts the attention of a loving escort played by Carolyn Jones, and the local gangster Maxie Fields, played by the great Oscar-winning Walter Matthau. He gets the opportunity to perform in the club to earn extra money, but the environment might turn him to crime. It's classic 1950s angry young men themes indeed, but Elvis was all here for it, and we are all here for it. The role was originally meant for James Dean or Ben Gazzara, both of Elvis's acting idols at the time, but next in line had to be Elvis, and he would work with the best director in his whole filmography, that being Oscar winner Michael Curtiz, who only made Mildred Pierce, Angels with Dirty Faces, and Casablanca, just to name a few. Curtiz made Elvis lose 15 pounds and shave his sideburns, which Elvis did without question. Prepping himself, reading the book, and the constantly rewritten script, everything was going to plan for Elvis. He was ready, he was pumped, until the bomb dropped, with Elvis being drafted into the Army just 1 month before production began. He was able to get a 60-day extension from shipping off because he wanted to do this role. Nothing was going to stop him. Because doesn't the government know he's the damn king? You talk about raw electric energy here, by God, between the second opening number with Elvis on Crawfish with Kitty White. So good, but also the amazing.
If you're looking for trouble, you came to the right place.
So hot. Not to mention Dixieland Rock and Hard-Headed Woman. And man, so many others. The soundtrack for this is, God, top 5 best. It's a clear case that not only is Elvis's performance so damn good, but the whole film is excellent. It has everything working for it. And with Elvis receiving such support all around with a great director, a great supporting cast, a great soundtrack, and a great script co-written by Michael V. Gazzo, you know, from Godfather Part 2, it's nothing but a spicy recipe of brilliance. But Elvis's dramatic moments here are some of the most heartbreaking and beautiful in his whole career. Everyone remembers his amazing scene at the hospital.
I got a lot of paying back to do.
Elvis would always rate his performance as Danny Fisher as his favorite. And when Elvis feels confident and great about his work, that rubs off the screen because you feel it too. There was quite some talk of Elvis potentially receiving an Oscar nomination for it, which I wouldn't have been opposed to, that's for sure. Because he shows it in every scene. You see the progression of where Danny starts and where he finishes, how his character actually matures. And when you look back on King Creole specifically, you really do feel sorry that Elvis didn't get more opportunities. But at least we have King Creole that showcases Elvis at his tip-top best. All of us, not just me, will always dream about what Elvis's career would have been as an actor if he continued with it. Curtiz, Siegel, Matthau, everybody Elvis ever worked with always said he would have had a phenomenal acting career had he been given those chances. The biggest stopping block being his devilish manager, of course, Colonel Tom Parker. The greatest tragedy in his career, among many indeed, is the missed opportunity of playing John Norman Howard in the 1976 film Of a Star is Born with Barbra Streisand. Barbara wanted Elvis so badly to play John. And you think, oh my God, of course. At that point of Elvis's career, he would have crushed it. It would have revived his acting career. And in the most positive light, it may have saved his life. Who's to really know, right? And Elvis wanted to do it so badly. But of course, Parker didn't want Elvis being portrayed as a drug-addicted artist in decline. So Elvis was out of the project, and Chris Christopherson was great, may he rest in peace, but in a multiverse, that's the casting I want, and I think we all want. Just a year later, Elvis would die, leaving behind a masterful legacy in music and pop culture, yes, but a tragic dream of what could have been. When you think and say Elvis Presley, you think music, you think hips, you think black leather, you think jumpsuits, you think jewels, you think Lisa Marie, you think Priscilla. So many amazing things come to mind. But for some people, some weird people like myself, I think aspiring actor. I always give him that credit and love, for it saves me from utter despair. Knowing what Elvis went through, of always trying to be taken seriously, always wanting to do his best. But there was something holding him back. Today, on his birthday, let's celebrate the man, the myth, the legend, with his rockin' hips, and praise for the actor that really lived in him. Elvis has left the building. Godspeed, sir, but how about you, folks? Tell me, do you agree with them pigs, boy? What are your favorite performances of the King? Please share and list in those comments below. Keep them coming now. If you like this, please click like, subscribe, and stay tuned for even more to come. For this is a brand new year, and so many great top 10s, along with movie reviews, are sure to come our way. Subscribe to the Patreon channel, folks. You will not regret it, because requests will be confirmed on that page. Sincerely, folks, I say thank you. Thank you very much for watching, and take life by the hips. As Elvis would say, it's your baby. Rock it.
Thank you. Good night.